It's been a while since we sat down and talked, but it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you. Glad to be back as always.
Yep, and we're here at Cafe 1888 here in Aurora, new location. Really nice. I want to say thank you to the team here for allowing us to talk about this important subject of immigration.
Yes.
So before we start, how have you been?
Good. Busy. Since the election, we have not slowed down a single bit. Lots of great things that we're going to do, and then we're going to come on the show to talk about, including the creation of a human trafficking unit.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful,
Yes.
great stuff. So today we'll be talking about immigration, and as you know, there are a lot of questions in the community about immigration. So at the moment, what are the current plans for immigration enforcement in our local communities, and will we see sustained or long-term activity? By the federal government in our communities?
So locally, there aren't any plans in regards to immigration, and this is why I'm very happy to be here to talk about that, because immigration, that's federal. When you talk about local police officers, the Aurora Police Department, Elgin Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, your Kane County State's Attorney's Office, we are prohibited by law from doing anything that is federal unless there is a law that specifically allows that to happen. And because it is a federal immigration law, we can do nothing about it. On top of that, there is also state law that specifically prohibits local law enforcement from assisting or enforcing any type of federal agent with immigration laws. So in 2017, then Governor Bruce Rauner created the Trust Act. The purpose of the Trust Act was to encourage victims of violent crimes to be able to come forward and report those crimes, even if they had immigration issues. You are a family who has somebody that was murdered, and you are undocumented. You're too afraid to go to the police about something because you're so afraid that you're going to be reported. Governor Rauner then wanted to encourage victims to come forward, because in reality, what we want to do locally is we want to go after the people who commit violent crimes.
Right.
And so the Trust Act was created that specifically forbade police officers from reporting that a person who came before them was undocumented. And frankly, they couldn't even ask whether or not they were here legally or illegally.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
That's a good thing.
For me as a prosecutor, it's good because I want to be able to go after the people who are dangerous in our community.
Right.
Because I don't care what the status of the victim is. I want to stop crimes from occurring.
Right.
And the thing is, we have a lot of people in Illinois. And if you look up why Bruce Rauner did this, Bruce Rauner was actually quoted as saying that Illinois has always been a state where we welcome people who are immigrants. And again, he was and is a Republican. Right. So this isn't an issue of politics, it's an issue of how we want to treat people within our community. Right. We have plenty of people who are in Illinois who are undocumented who don't commit any crimes whatsoever. We do have people who are undocumented who commit crimes. I don't believe being documented or undocumented causes you to commit a crime. People just choose to commit crimes for a variety of reasons. Right. And I think when we created the Trust Act, we did something right here in Illinois, which is to encourage people to come forward and have a voice to protect themselves from the people who are hurting them. So the Trust Act was put out in 2017, and then it was reinforced in 2021. In between there, we also had a different law called the Voices Act, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But in 2021, they put into law a way forward, which kind of combined the Trust Act and the Voices Act. And what it specifically says is that our local law enforcement can do nothing to assist federal government in terms of assisting in immigration enforcement. So this includes our sheriff. He cannot tell the ICE agents who is in the jail that is undocumented. He cannot assist in any type of a search warrant or arrest of an individual. Right. And specifically, there's a lot of confusion between an immigration detainer and an actual warrant for somebody's arrest. A detainer through immigration courts is civil in nature. It is not an arrest warrant. It is not something that is a court order that tells somebody to make an arrest of an individual. Now, if a federal court has an arrest warrant for an individual, that is a court order that we have to follow.
Right.
A detainer warrant or hold or whatever it is that they're calling is civil in nature, we can do nothing about that.
Right.
So if we have a person in our jail that has a detain or hold on them, our sheriff cannot hold that individual because he could be faced with civil or criminal penalties if he does that because of the Trust Act.
Right. Now, there's so many people who they hear that and their rebuttal would be, well, he's breaking the law.
He's actually following the law.
Exactly, he's following the law.
Yes.
I mean, and if there was ever anything so clear.
It is, and it is very clear. And the problem is the internet is full of misinformation. And because we've polarized this whole issue by trying to make it Republican or Democrat, as opposed to looking at what we're really trying to do in Illinois, which is protect victims of violent crimes,
Right.
people have no idea that our sheriff is following the law. The Aurora Police Department, when they refuse to help, or the Elgin Police Department, who recently had to do that, they're just following the law.
Right, right.
So as this is going on, obviously we're trying to provide as much information as possible. We're trying to get out in the community to let them know what actually is true. We continue to follow the law so we don't get in the way of what immigration does or ICE does, but we are going to continue to do our job and investigate crimes. For years, there's been federal statutes that allow victims of violent crimes to be able to apply legally to stay here in the United States, and that's through the U visa and the T visa. It's called a U visa and a T visa because that's a subsection. It's subsection U and T. But these are for victims of violent crimes to be able to stay here while still cooperating with investigations. And so we have always followed that in Illinois, and in Kane County, we've had a program that continued that. In 2019, this is the Voices Act that I was talking about before, which gave even more protections to these victims to be able to legally apply to stay here in Illinois. And so that just gives them an appeal ability in case it's denied, and it just gives them more protections overall. So for local law enforcement and the state's attorney's office, we just continue to follow the law as it's prescribed to us to do so.
So, what should the public know?
Well, so the public should know that local law enforcement is not in the business of, by state law, enforcing federal laws. And so while there's the appearance that the local police officers or police department, sheriff, myself, that we're taking a political stance on something, in reality we're not. And they need to really understand that what we're doing is following state law as mandated to us. And that's the big thing. And if they have questions about deportation, they really need to talk to the federal government about it because we don't have any business with that whatsoever.
Right. There's workshops and different things that are happening as well. Does that general information about workshops or things that can help or answer questions, are those being also provided by the state's attorney's office, or is that something that's just at the community level? Churches and libraries and such?
That's a great question. We can't provide that because the state's attorney's office cannot provide legal advice to the general public. The clients that I have are the elected officials in Kane County, such as the sheriff, the county board, so I can't provide individual legal advice.
Right.
The biggest thing that I'm afraid of as the state's attorney is the unintended consequences of losing victims in cases. Either one, because they've been deported, because they've been picked up in some sort of raid that's happened, or two, they're too afraid to even come to court because they don't understand that there's nothing that I can do to have them deported. So if I send out a subpoena for a victim in a domestic violence case, and the victim is in fact subpoenaed for it, he or she may be too afraid to even come to court because they're so afraid to come into a government building to testify against the abuser because they may not understand that I, as the state's attorney, can't even tell ICE that that individual's there. Court security, the deputies who are there, even the police officers who made the arrest of the offender who may be there as well, all prohibited from saying anything to ICE about it. And so that's my biggest concern, is I may see a chilling effect on all of my violent crime cases because people are too afraid to come in because of what's happening now.
Right.
We have become much more trauma informed over the years for victims. When I first started prosecution, that was in 2002 in New Orleans, and then eventually I was here in Kane County in 2005. And when we first started, it was more of a focus on punishment of the offender, less on the voice of the victims. How can we help them? Over the years, we've really focused on the trauma aspect of it to victims and not re-traumatizing them as we bring them back into court to testify. We've also realized that the majority of the people who come in through our criminal justice system do so because of lack of resources, mental health issues, substance use disorder, and that they're committing crimes because of that. By focusing on victims, but also on the rehabilitation of offenders, we've actually done better work at getting people out of the system without re-traumatizing victims through that. And as we've said on the show before, especially in our domestic violence cases, we know our offenders were former victims at some point. And when you look at it that way, you're actually really helping to give a voice to victims, breaking cycles of violence, and getting people out of our system better than what we ever did before, when our end result was, we're going to make you testify because we just want to put that person in jail or prison. So we have a very robust victim advocacy portion of my office where our advocates will help to connect our victims with resources. So we have a list of immigration attorneys. Obviously, we sign off on the U visa and T visa certification on a daily basis for victims. We help to send off the paperwork whenever possible. We refer them to organizations like Mutual Ground here in Aurora or Crisis Center in Elgin if they're victims of domestic violence. We help a lot with homelessness issues. So we really try to help the entire person as they're going through this process as a victim, because we really want to make sure that victims become survivors.
Going forward, it's only February. Going forward, what should people know or be aware of?
So the biggest thing is when you hear something, even if it's a clip, find out if it's true or not. I've seen plenty of things where they're saying that our sheriff is doing this, the Aurora Police Department is doing that, and it's not true. The federal government gets to decide what it is that they want to do. They can communicate it to us, but most of the time they are not communicating it. I'm never going to know if the federal government is sending ICE agents into the courthouse unless I am walking around and I see ICE agents in there. The same thing goes with our police departments. If they decide that they want to execute one of their detainer warrants, we may not know that they're even in our community. And so what I'm asking our community to do is actually do the deep dive to find out what's happening. Again, the law prohibits us in local law enforcement from doing anything to assist in this. Now, if an ICE agent is in danger, obviously that's a crime. We can come out and help and assist with that. But other than that, we're not going to know what they're enforcing and when they're enforcing, because they're under no legal duty to let us know what it is that they're doing. We have a federal government and we have a state and local government. And we have a job to do just as much as they have a job to do. And we, in the local level, actually have to report to the Attorney General's office if we have any involvement with our federal government. And that, again, was a law that kind of combined the Voices Act and the Trust Act into an act called the Way Forward. And so this is so that our state government understands what we're doing and that we're following the law just as much as we expect any general citizen to follow the law.
What's next for the Kane County State's Attorney's Office? What does the rest of this year look like for yourself and your team?
So the biggest thing that we want to continue to do is to be out in the community as much as possible to give the help that we can, while also making sure that we're keeping an eye on violent crimes. One of the things that I've been concerned about over the last couple of years, especially as we have seen immigration issues continue, particularly with people coming from Venezuela and other communities, and even being bused into our community without any resources or guidance being given to them. My job is to follow state law. State law means I'm going to make sure that we enforce every single one of our criminal statutes that we have. And we have too many people in our community and other communities that are going to take advantage of the people who lack those resources. And that's where we're just going to see an influx of human trafficking cases. And I'm not just talking about the sex trafficking where people think that there's these massage parlors and that's set up. We have labor trafficking that's happening here in Kane County. This labor trafficking usually comes in the bigger businesses where they're putting people in a position where they're barely paying them, if they're paying them whatsoever. And they're just going to increase their own profits based off of that. So as I said in the beginning of this, we've created this human trafficking unit, and now we have 2 specialized investigators, 2 prosecutors, a victim resource advocate, and another advocate, along with a person who is there to assist in getting civil resources, so civil legal protections. And the idea is we're going to work with our local law enforcement so that when they suspect any type of human trafficking, our specialized division will be able to go in and investigate this and prosecute the people who are trafficking victims. And it's important to know they're going to traffic victims who are here undocumented, but also people who are legally here.
Really?
Statistically, we've seen that especially with kids, teens who maybe don't have a good home life, maybe just have one parent, maybe just are feeling like they need something else, these traffickers actually go after them, and they do a lot of that through social media. I can help you get out. I can help you have a better life. I can do whatever it is. And they traffic them into this lifestyle. So our unit is here to help everybody who's being human trafficked. And I think that we're going to find a lot of cases here in Kane County that people didn't even think we have, because they just expected it to be at the hubs, like in Chicago, or close to either side of the United States. And so I'm very excited about this initiative and how we can really protect the most vulnerable in our community.
Well, speaking on that too, I know that your child
exploitation unit, yes,
unit has been doing great work now for. When was that established?
22.
22. Yeah. So that's been going strong for 3 years now.
Yes. So we ended up arresting, because we started in August of 22, 3 individuals for child exploitation. So this is peddling child pornography, creating it, disseminating it, reproducing it. In 2023, we arrested 21 people, and last year we arrested 31. And we're already trending to go even more than that. And so, and I continue to tell people this because they're wondering why our numbers are going up. It was because they were not being investigated at some point, and now they are being investigated. And this is in conjunction with all of our local police departments. And so we've been doing great work to take these people who are going after children and are statistically more likely to offend on a child in their life, and we're putting them behind bars.
Excellent work that the Kane County State's Attorney's Office is doing.
Thank you.
And I know that the rest of the year will continue to be bright and definitely effective for the people of Kane County.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for the work you do, and thank you to the team that you have as well, and their continued work.
And it really is them. I may come with the ideas, but they're the ones who do the work. So the people in my office are amazing. Every single person from, and I say this all the time, the front desk, who people come in and they're usually in the midst of some sort of trauma that's happening, and they're able to connect them with resources, all the way up through me. We have the attorneys, the advocates, the investigators. They're the ones who do the work in that office that really save lives in our community.
Jamie, thank you very much for coming on to the program this morning.
Thank you.
And hope that you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.